Hi, welcome back to Music Theory Logic. My name's Andrew, and today is another music theory breakdown where I've recreated popular songs so that we can talk about some music theory. And this one is much in demand and needed. This is the return of the great Adele, and this song is called Easy on Me. Let's go ahead into the logic session. So if you haven't seen one of these before, I'm not going to play the original audio. I always encourage you to pause the video, go support the original wherever you listen to music. If you find these helpful, you would help me out a ton by subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, here is my recreation of Easy on Me, a slightly smaller song structure because you aren't going to hear vocals. Here it is. I'll go ahead and stop it there. I find it so hard not to try to sing along with that, and I'm sure you'd be glad to know, glad that I didn't sing along because I'm not the best singer at all. So let's talk about some of the music theory. This song is in the key of F major. It's at 71 beats per minute. F major is a pretty simple key. It only has one black note. That note is we're going to call B flat. So everything else is just a white key, or otherwise known as our letters in music. So we have F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, and F. That sounds like this. Cool. The main chord progression for the verse is going to be a 1 chord. That's an F major. That has F, A, and C in it. And then a 6 chord. That's a D minor. That has D, F, and A. Notice those two chords share 2 notes. That makes those 2 chords feel really smooth from one to the next. Our next chord is an A minor. That has A, C, and E. Our following chord and our final one in the verse is a B flat. That's our 4 chord. So A minor was our 3. B flat, our 4 chord, and this has actually an additional scale or additional chord tone that makes it a major 7th. The notes in the B flat major 7th are B flat, D, F, and A. Notice that this D, F, and A is actually the same thing as the second chord, the D minor. So that's another way of thinking about major 7ths. It's basically a minor chord with another note added, a major 3rd below that minor chord. The chorus chord progression, for the most part, is doing our F major. It's playing a C major. So there's our 5 chord, our 4 chord, B flat, back to our 1, then our 5. My loop cut it short, so let's hear that one more time. From our 1, F major, our 5, C major, our 4 B flat major, back to our 1 F, to our 5. Cool. So those are the basic notes that outline what else is happening in the song, but let's get into the actual specifics. The intro plays what is happening in the verse that repeats entirely. We have the vocal melody. This becomes really close to what Adele is singing on the verses. We kind of hear it doubling up on the piano throughout the song, which is a really cool technique. If you're writing a song that's minimal, like with piano and vocals, you can do things that the singer's doing on the piano, and that will link the two instruments together, and it creates this cool harmony. It's more of like a tone harmony. If they're singing the same note, the tones between a piano and a voice sound different. So when you add them up, they're stronger than any of them on their own. So the intro piano on its own sounds like this. All right, so first, the left hand, the chords that are happening. We have an F5. Now, I put the A in, and it didn't really sound to me like the original. So in the very beginning of the song and throughout the verse, because a lot of times Adele ends up singing the A, that chord is voiced so that there's no middle note. So it's just F and C. All right, that's our 1 chord. Going to that minor 6 chord, that's our DFA. Going to our 3 chord, that's our ACE. Going to our 4 chord, B flat DF. So the first chord section I showed you. Now those are quite soft relative to the melody. The melody is rotating around the note F. So F is this one right here. All right, so it's happening throughout. It goes F, 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 C, F, and then down to E, F. Then it goes to F, D, F, G, and then the F, E, F. So that note between the 1 and the 7 from our scale, F to E, becomes common. That's what repeats. F, E, F, E, F, E. And there's a lot of cool rhythms happening here. So we have some syncopation. So if we listen to the chords in the melody, bum, 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 that right there, the second half of each measure is a dotted quarter note, sort of like quarter note triplets, as we would call them. So this is, by definition, some syncopation, which is a fancy way of saying displacing or moving where the accent is, or where the impact, where you nod your head where it's important, as opposed to the downbeats, which are these numbers or quarter notes. All right, so since that doesn't hit on a quarter note, that's what means it's syncopated. So altogether, the melody, so let's actually play the melody without those chords. The melody on its own sounds like this. All right, and what's, again, interesting, back to the syncopation, is like even where the melody ends, it's ending on this, it's like the 16th note before the quarter note right there, which makes it stand out. It's also stands out because, again, our chords are, at least in the first measure, they're on the downbeat. So that syncopation, we notice it that much more. And it becomes a really cool rhythm, and she does that a lot. It's almost like a slight motif. So the melody with the chords, again, sounds like this. All right, so that's going to repeat when Adele starts singing right there. At the same time, we are hearing really low in the mix. This is a sort of sustained mix. It's almost, there's a lot more happening, and I like this song a lot more, but it's similar to, if you saw one breakdown of Driver's License by Olivia Rodrigo, that song has a really like drawn out, it's like building the whole time. It starts out small and more is added. And this song does that kind of a lot in the mix. So we have two other instruments that are, or I guess three other instruments that are happening. A pad, all right, I'm rolling off the top end. This is Alchemy, default to Logic. It's playing the same chord, so like the left hand. All right, now it's slightly different voicings and I guess fully different chords. So we're playing the one chord that whole time, just holding it. Now it's really low in the mix there, so it's just kind of adding like a pedal tone, if you will. And then this section right here, it's going from that one chord down to C, E, A. So this is like the one chord down to the minor 3, back to the 1 to the minor 3, and then finally down to that 4 chord. All right, so that subtle layer with our piano sounds like this. So there's that pedal tone. And this pad is really kind of like additionally harmonizing that. So that's the same chord we find on the piano. This right here is kind of mimicking the vocal line, the melody. All right, going on to our bass. Our bass is going from our 1 up to our 6, down to our 3, up to that 4. Another term for this is a root note bass line. So like all of these are the main notes of our chord. We have an F major, we're playing an F note. We have a D minor, we're playing a D note. We have an A minor, we're playing an A note. We have a B flat major, we're playing, you guessed it, a B flat note. So very simple. That is a bass line that will work with pretty much anything. Rhythmically, it has some of this heartbeat sort of rhythm. So I describe this as a heartbeat anytime it goes like bum, bum, bum. That's sort of like what our hearts are doing. As we get to talk about the drums that don't come in until much later in the song, that foreshadows that. And then finally, the bass rhythm right here, that's the same rhythm that we see in the melody. So that's a really cool, the strange syncopation that I showed you in the melody, that also happens in the bass. And that's important because it kind of like ties it all together. Whether this was an actual human being playing a bass with Adele or it was somebody like me on a computer, they were basically listening to what she was doing or the melody and following that. So it sounds like it comes from the same song. Cool. That covers our verses. We'll talk about drums in a second. Let's go into our chorus. So the first chorus section, we don't hear any drums. The chord progression is slightly different voicings here. So this is an F major chord. It's inverted, so we see C on the bottom. That basically just links this next chord, the 5 that's coming up. So this is the 1 chord to the 5 chord, C major, briefly back to the 1 chord, going to our 4 chord, the B flat major, going back to the 1 chord, back to the 4, and then finally that is going to be our hold on, our that's our B flat major chord, right? No, C, F, and B flat. So this is actually sort of a different flavor of that B flat chord, if you will. We could call this a few different things, but I'm going to call this like a B flat sus4 or a B flat over C. That's what a pop chart might call that. So that happens the whole time. Now, this starts to highlight the syncopation that's happening in the vocal even more. Most of these rhythms are straight on quarter notes. So it's going 1, 2, 3, 4. That's establishing the downbeat. So when you hear the melody against it, it really starts to sound syncopated. Let's talk about the melody On its own, it's going to sound like this. All right, really infectious melody, that rundown. It's really cool. Adele kills it on this. So it's walking down from our 5. It's going 5, 4, 3, back to 4, 4, 3, 2. This right here is a melodic sequence, fancy way of saying a pattern applied to our scale. Comes back to that third note, the A. It goes back to the second note, the G. Back to the A. Then we go 1, 2, 3, back to 1. So that's F, G, A, back to F, down to 6, our D. If we wanted to, we could perhaps describe this chorus as being in the relative minor, same notes as F major, but we call it, it would be D minor. The reason I didn't do that is because we're starting and ending with the 1 chord, so the 1 chord being F major, so it seems like it's better to call this the key of F major. Cool. The chorus, those chords with our piano, and I should mention these chords are similar to what was happening on the pad before. We hear that they don't always they don't always happen at the same time, and so together they create a really cool texture. Now, one thing I should mention, these lines that you're seeing on the bottom, this is our sustain pedal. What that means is it's if you've ever played piano, an acoustic piano, you might have remember that there are pedals on the piano. The pedals change the sound. The pedal on the most furthest to the right, popular musicians will call a sustain pedal because it makes the note sustain. Sustain means to hold out longer. If you're took piano lessons, you might remember some people will call that a damper pedal. All right, so if you are curious about this technique, go and watch my video, how to make virtual pianos sound more realistic. This helps a ton. It's kind of tedious drawing these in. This is when the line is high, that's the foot pedal being down. When the line goes low, that's the foot pedal coming up, as counterintuitive as that is. So yeah, the chorus goes like that. The whole time we're hearing the pedal throughout the entire song. That's really what smooths out the entire thing. Cool. So the last section, I guess, we'll show you the bass. The bass line is also following closer to the root position, but has more of like some movement. It's going from F up to D, down to C. Let's play this bass on its own. So F up to D, then down to C. So 1, 6, 5, down to the 3, down to 2, and then 2, 3, 4, down to the 5 or 1 F, and then 6, 5, 2, 3, 2, back to A, and then B flat. So 3, 4. That on its own sounds like this. Now, what's really cool about this bass line is it's not following the root position as much as it is sort of harmonizing the melody. If we let's listen to just the bass and the melody, you'll notice that when the melody is doing this sequence, the bass kind of mimics it. All right, so it's definitely following that vocal. If we look at our piano chords, next to our bass chords. Let's see if I can put those together. All right, so when we're on the 1, that's just our root position. When we go up to this D, what's interesting is this kind of D, F, A, C, this makes it a minor 7 on the 6th scale degree, so D minor 7. This is then a C, that's root position, so that's our, over our 5 chord, our C major. We get an A here, that's walking down to our G, and then this is what's really interesting. This all together, makes this chord, instead of the 4 chord, which is B flat, D, and F, this is basically like a 2 7, so like a B flat minor, G, B flat, D, F. Pretty cool. So a minor 2, and that's a 7th chord. And again, that's not on the piano, but that's the bass and the piano added up. So you'll notice this. Cool. So again, that's our 1 chord, our F major. This is our 5 chord, C major. This we could call our 2 chord, G minor. It's a minor 7, so G minor 7th. And then our 4 chord. All right. And again, our 4 chord, a lot of times we're going to get the note A as well. That makes that a B flat major 7. Cool. Let's talk about the drums. So the reason we haven't talked about the drums so far is that they're, first of all, a really subtle element, and they happen towards the end of the song. So they come in the second part of verse 2. They're doing just a low pass, so you don't hear a lot of highs. It's a syncopated kick pattern. It has the heartbeat rhythm I was talking about before, where things go bump, ba bump. It sounds like this. Kind of a cool phrase. It's built into it's the same thing happening twice in the beginning. So kick, 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 kick. So kick on the 1, the 16th note before beat 3, on beat 3, and the 8th note after 3. Then the 16th note, the last 16th note of the measure, and then that repeats minus the final kick. And then the second part of this measure, we get these I call them triplet quarter notes. 3 in the place of where we had 4 before. So kick on 1, kick on beat the 8th note after 2, and then kick on the final 4th quarter note. And then finally we get a dotted 8th note into 16th, a kick on 1, and a kick on the last 16th note of the group of 4. That repeats almost identically the second time we hear it, only we don't get that final, I called it a dotted 8th and a 16th. We get what was happening in the third measure a second time, identically. Cool. Then into the chorus, we get the same motif that we found in the very beginning, that first measure of the drums. It's just repeating the whole time. So kick, 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 kick. So that 2-bar phrase is repeating the whole time, and that's essentially the same thing. Just the second version of it is skipping, omitting the final note. Cool. So then that pretty much covers all of our verses and choruses. The last thing to talk about is this final or this post-chorus / the bridge section. So on the topic of the drums, it's pretty cool. We hear the 4 on the floor. So kick on the quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, and 4. We get extra ones, but we are hitting on all of those downbeats. So that we find in lots of genres of music, a lot of like popular modern music, like dance music, is house music revolves around that rhythm right there, the 1, 2, 3, and 4. By having that in, it makes the groove of the song really pick up, which picks up the energy, and then everything falls out into a small version, basically a smaller version of the intro or a verse. So that together sounds like this. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. All right. So that the drums add a lot there in terms of picking up the energy. So they're slower on basically like a half note rhythm, and then they speed up and we get that quarter note, which picks up the energy into our final, this post-chorus bridge section. Before we get into that, the piano / the melody has a little bit of movement at the end. Let's talk about the chords first. So we're basically holding that 1 chord. All right, and then we go to the 5 right at the end of that drum section. The melody section. All right, so she continues. She sings the B flat A like a trill. Continues. All right, so for this bridge, this is essentially the same thing as the intro. It's softer. However, we get an additional melody at the end. And this is kind of an example of development. It picks up. We didn't hear this the whole song, so it really it's rewarding when we finally hear it, and it continues the same motif that we heard before. So the chords are the same from the verse. So the 1, the 6, the 3, then here's the 4. That's the melody I'm talking about. So we haven't heard this before. We were doing F, E, F, E, F, E. It's the same exact rhythm, but we go up to the next scale degrees. We go to A, G, A, G, A, G. That note on top of the B flat major 7, or B flat, I gave it away, makes that a major 7. So that also is a really pretty harmony. I don't think in my opinion, you can't really go wrong with major 7s. I love how they sound. Cool. So that covers all of these different instrumental sections. Once again, this song is not really like the craziest in terms of the amount of layers or the amount of chord changes, but honestly, like music that, the beauty in art is like sometimes less is more, and the really great art says profound things somewhat simply. It's almost more profound. It's easy to make something complicated sound complicated, but it's harder to make something that is somewhat simple sound deep. So I would be, if I were a betting person, I would probably be betting that Adele is going to get some sort of accolade for this project. It sounds pretty awesome, and it's really refreshing to hear an artist that has carved out their own path and really sounds, I don't think too many people sound like her. So if you have any questions for me, feel free to leave them in the comments. If you have any ideas for songs you want to see me break down, also leave that in the comments. It can be hard figuring out the next song to do. Once again, my name's Andrew. I hope you enjoyed this. If you do, you'd help me out a ton by subscribing to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. Tell your friends about it. Be kind to your fellow human being. I always say that. It makes it easier for everyone, regardless of whether you're a musician or not. The more people that are nice to each other, the more we all enjoy this time on the planet. So have a wonderful day. I will see you next time. Cheers.